Okay, so I love facts. I was recently at a YouTube retreat and Kathryn from DoItOnADime was there. She gave us all little nicknames based on us, and hers for me was something like Facty Callie, because pretty much the whole 2 nights I kept like telling people about studies that I read, and I was like, hey, did you know that? And so since I share a lot of content about decluttering and organization, I thought it would be fun to share with you some of my favorite stats all about clutter that may totally blow your mind. Number 1, 25% of Americans have a clutter problem. Now this isn't saying that 25% of Americans have clutter. 25% of Americans, 1 out of every 4, have a clutter problem. That's a lot of people. 55% of people say that clutter is a big stress in their life. I think this is really interesting because more than half of us feel stress, not just some stress, big stress from our clutter. But then a lot of us continue to neglect it week after week after week, and we're just kind of letting that stress eat away at us because it's a hard thing to tackle. Now, piggybacking off of that one, number 3 goes on to sort of prove those feelings of stress. And there was a study that actually showed that people who view their homes as cluttered tend to have higher stress. In 2010, the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology did a study, and it looked at women. Well, it looked at women and their husbands, and it had them sort of go through their homes and point out different things and talk about their space. And it found that the women who viewed their homes as cluttered actually had higher cortisol levels throughout the day. Naturally, as people, we tend to get a spike of cortisol in the morning. It's actually a hormone designed to help us get awake in the morning, and then our body naturally decreases cortisol throughout the day. So it's a natural thing that happens in our body. But these people who viewed their home as cluttered had higher spikes and higher levels of cortisol all through the day. And a lot of them actually even had a spike of cortisol at the end of the day, when we're supposed to be naturally decreasing our cortisol as we get ready for bed. Now, going off of number 3, number 4, that same study proved that women are more impacted by clutter than men. Like I said, it looked at both husbands and wives and had them both walk through the space. In almost every case, the woman who viewed the home as cluttered, who would point out the clutter as a pain point, the men did not. The men tended to be a lot more clutter blind to it. And a little bonus fact on that, they actually found that men can be much more clutter blind to the clutter in their home, but then they get a much higher level of stress when it's time to address it, where women don't. So men are allowed to they allow themselves to be clutter blind to it on a day-to-day basis, but when it's time for them to tackle it, that's when they get the stress. And in addition, according to CEFL, the Center for Everyday Lives of Families, there was a study that found the amount of stress women experience at home is directly proportional to the amount of stuff that their family had accumulated. All right, next up, number 6, people with clutter don't sleep as well. Now, earlier I told you about those women who tend to have higher cortisol levels throughout the day and then would actually have a spike of cortisol at the end of the day. It kind of makes sense that they wouldn't sleep as well since our body's supposed to be decreasing cortisol as we get ready for bed. But there have been other studies that prove that people who live in cluttered homes don't sleep as well. Pamela Thatcher is an assistant professor at St. Lawrence University, and she said that people who sleep in cluttered homes are more likely to have sleeping problems. She said that she thinks clutter tends to bombard our minds with this excessive stimuli, causing our senses to work overtime, which makes it difficult to relax, both physically and mentally. I feel like it also leads to feelings of anxiousness and guilt. You constantly looking at this clutter that, going back to number 2, 55% of us say it's giving us stress, and every day we're like, oh, that clutter's still there, that clutter's still there, it's making us feel anxious, it's making us feel guilty that we haven't taken care of it. And that makes it a lot harder to relax at the end of the day too. Next, I read a study about the correlation between a cluttered kitchen and somebody's choices in what they choose to eat. And they found that stress-triggered clutter may also trigger avoidance techniques like eating junk food and oversleeping. In a really Cliff Notes version, they essentially put people in a cluttered kitchen and then offered them a cookie, and they found that people who were in more cluttered spaces were more likely to eat junk food. And it was specifically sweet-based junk food, which I think is really interesting. And a fun little note on this study is they actually found that mindset made a big difference in somebody's choices. They had some of the participants in the study do a small practice where they would say things about being in control or read statements about being in control, and they found that tended to sort of like stop that stress trigger right where it was, and those people were less likely to then eat the cookies. The stress sort of triggered them feeling out of control, which then tended to trigger those avoidance techniques. But by simply shifting their mindset and saying I am in control, they were able to sort of stop that domino effect. So interesting. I love this next one. You've probably heard it before. I feel like it's the clutter statistic I've seen shared the most, and it is that the US accounts for 3.7% of all children in the world, but we also account for 47% of all of the children's toys and books. I don't even need to comment on that. I think that one speaks for itself. This next stat came from an article from the Cleaning Institute, but they said that clutter accounted for 40% of all of the housework that we have to do in our home. So essentially 40% of all of the work you are doing in your home is just tending to your clutter. It's just taking care of the excess you have in your home. If that is not some motivation to rid yourself of some excess stuff you have, then I don't know what is. This next stat may be my favorite. I don't know if I already said that, but this one might be my favorite. As somebody who lives in a smaller home, now I say small because it's very relative. When I say I live in 1,100 square feet with 2 small children and 2 adults working from home full time, some people are like, that's crazy, where do you put everything? And other people are like, I live in 800 square feet, like not a big deal. So it's relative, but let me share this stat with you. The median single family home is 2,355 square feet. In 1970, it was only 1,500 square feet. And in the 1950s, it was 983 square feet. Essentially, we've tripled the amount of square foot in the average house in the last, 70 years. Our families aren't getting bigger, we're not having more kids, it's just because we've accumulated a lot more stuff. The next stat is that people are more productive when working in an organized and tidy space. Now, there has been another study that found people were more creative when they were in a disorganized space. So these ones, you have creative and you have productive. So certainly there's means for both of them. And this one makes a lot of sense to me because I personally cannot concentrate very well when my space is messy around me. Sometimes I'll sit down to get some work done and I'm like, listen, I just gotta ignore this mess over here. I gotta get this project done and then I can tend to it. But I feel like I'm always just a little bit thinking about that mess over there, and it definitely makes me less productive. My last fact is that Americans collectively spend $2.7 billion annually on stuff they just can't find. Your house is messy, you got stuff displaced, you don't know where everything goes, you can't find something. $2.7 billion annually we are spending on stuff we just can't find. We own it, we just can't find it. All right, my friends, that does it. I hope that you enjoyed some of these clutter statistics. Maybe some of them were eye-opening or interesting or whatever to you. I love my facts, and so I wanted to share them with you. If you're looking for some more videos around like, okay, now I know these stats and I need to take care of my clutter, I need to declutter, I will link some of my best decluttering and organization videos down below. These are videos all about decluttering and organizing for the everyday person, not for the organized person, because I certainly have not been an organized person my entire life. I'm not even organized all the time now. Organizing for the everyday person, decluttering for the average gal. As always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day. Remember to be kind to yourself and others, and I'll see you all in my next video.